here talking about Tidy Pro.
We are.
Andy Naylor, you are one of the stars of Tidy Pro. You've had two releases.
That's way too kind of you to say.
You've had 2 releases out so far, both of them on 2 different labels. Funky Pills was great, and then the one that came out on Tidy White.
Yes.
Again, it was so close to Untidy.
Very kind, thank you. I appreciate that.
It's one of those tracks that it's what I call. Let me put the bottle down. It's one of those tracks what I would call it a crossover track. So we're talking about Tidy Pro. You are one of the Tidy Pro students. How did you become involved with Tidy Pro? How did you sign up? What made you want to join and sign up?
So, very quick bit of history. I was playing out a long time ago when I was originally into Hard House, back in sort of 98. And I was playing out a lot until about 2004, quit in 2004 and just kind of put that part of my life behind me. And then I was asked to come back out and play a reunion gig for something. And I forget how many years back that was. But maybe not last year, but the year before. And so I was like, oh, I quite like the idea. Maybe I'll get back into playing again. Pandemic hit. And then I saw the course. And I'm like, while I can't play out, the course is here. I've got some time on my hands. This seems like a really smart thing to do. It's sort of fallen in my lap. It just made a lot of sense. So I literally signed up for the course. I had a Mac. I bought Logic. And then I sat there and got started.
Okay, because you never ever opened the door before, did you? The digital audio workstation. You've never really.
I had a copy of Cubase. And
that is retro.
Could do nothing. Cubase, Wave, Lab and SoundForge, I think were the 3 sort of things. But I knew nothing. At that point, I remember just trying to get as many plugins as I possibly could. I knew nothing about arrangement, sound choice, reference track, nothing at all. And I just went round in circles and circles and circles. I wouldn't even say at that point I was doing anything productive or useful. I just thought I knew it was something I should be doing. But I was no good. So no, when this came along, theoretically I was a completely blank canvas. I knew nothing. I literally bought Logic the week before, and then I sort of went into the whole thing as open-minded as I could. Yeah.
How did you find the master classes then? How did you get on with them? Did you find it not that easy is probably not the right word, but were you comfortable when you first started doing the course? Did you feel out of depth?
So I went into the course thinking I was going to be out of depth, because I knew nothing. I didn't know how to use Logic. I thought that was going to be the case. It was miles from the case. The way the course was presented, the way that it was ran, you can't get left behind. Even where, obviously, we're starting with some more, sort of really basic sort of things, and it's covered in such a way that even if I imagine someone's coming into it and they're already producing, they are still going to learn things from the teaching of those basic concepts. But for me, going into it not having done anything, it laid such a foundation, and the sound choice. Ben is like sound choice. That rings through my head with everything that I do now as one of the most simplest basic things, but it underpins everything that then becomes quality in a track that you make. So that the classes, the way that they were ran, built upon each other step by step by step. You'd do your work, you'd send your homework in, it would get marked, you'd have feedback from that, you'd sort the feedback out, do the homework from that, and then take that the next step into the next week. So you never really got sort of behind. The feedback was great. They were telling you exactly what you needed to change, the things you needed to look out for, what was good, what wasn't good. So then when you got into the next week, so from the original drum loop, then you're adding the bass, the thing just sort of built very, very easy step by step over the weeks. Yeah, for sure.
So was Funky Pills the track you worked on? Okay, so that's completely different.
Yep.
So how did you go from the course to having Funky Pills?
So the timeline goes, so in the course I wrote a track called Your Energy, and the reference track for that was the Paul Maddox and Glasby remix of, I think it's I Need You. I forget the title, but I Need You, and it was a Baby Doc and SJ track.
SJ,
So I love that track, and Your Energy, the reference, although now if you listen to them, they probably don't really, it doesn't sound like that would be the reference, but that was my reference track, and I wrote Your Energy. Originally I'd written the track, we got to the last week, the A&R week, and the guys were like, I didn't know how much they liked it at that point. I thought, I think I've done all right, but they said to me, look, you need to get a vocal. So Hayley Colleen, we got her to come in and write the vocal, and it just took the track to a whole different level, made it stand out. And that was the first track that got signed to Vicious Circle. I followed that up with a track called Sweat, which was about the same sort of speed, sort of similar vibe. That got signed to Vicious Circle. Then I'm like, Sam's in my ear, kind of like untidy, and I'm like, okay, I'm gonna have a go at something different. That's when I wrote Coming Up Hot, which is actually what's only just come out. So that's all the way back. That was the first slower, funkier, untidy vibe thing. So I wrote Coming Up Hot. I was like, kind of like it. The guy said, we're probably going to maybe take that for Tidy White later down the line. And I stayed in that vibe. Then next came Funky Pills. Then came Beat Won't Stop. And a couple of others in the same sort of vibe afterwards that have been signed to other labels. But those two came back to back quickly. Because all of a sudden, I think in about a space of maybe 6 weeks, I'd written 4 or 5 tracks all in that sort of untidy vibe. So that's sort of where those two pretty much came from, yeah.
So you've been quite fortunate in the way that you've got BK, Ben K, as your tutor, your mentor. What does that mean to you? Having been, a massive supporter of Hard House and playing back in the early days, the heyday of Hard House.
First of all, it's very surreal. So I can remember listening to Ben's tracks coming out, still as a clubber at that point, listening to things coming out, Music Is Moving, great example. His first track with Andy Farley, Concentrate. Like, so these tracks I remember thinking, like, they're on a completely different level. I think I bought pretty much everything that you put out, and I still have all the vinyl. And knowing that he was running the course, I'm like, if you're going to go and learn this genre of music, like, is there anybody better right now to go and be taught by? Not just because of his back catalogue and the godlike status that he has in terms of the back catalogue, and it's how he teaches it. Some people can be out there and can be very good at something and poor teachers. Yeah. He seems to be able to. He's obviously
patient.
Very patient. But he's able to articulate things, and obviously, his knowledge is up here, but he's able to sort of unpack that down to the small parts for someone like me as a complete novice and absolute newbie to it, to be like, here are the simple things to work on. And then very quickly he will escalate that to, like, you're starting to work on much more sort of technical stuff. But as a teacher, I don't know, I can't imagine there's anyone out there that's anywhere close to what Ben can do in the way that he articulates the course, what to think about, how to get the best out of you. I carried on working with Ben after the course through Connect, and we've been working backwards and forwards on a number of things.
That's the mentorship program, Connect.
Yes. Yeah. So Connect is if someone does the masterclass course, the main course, and you're totally into it, which I was like, I don't really want this to stop.
Yeah.
There's still clearly so much more progression and potential. So I joined Connect, which got me access to. I chose Ben. There's a number of people that you could go and sort of work with. I chose Ben, and we continued to work afterwards. And most of the other tracks that I've done since that, Ben's had some sort of input in terms of balancing and certain arrangement tricks, and just my continued progression as an artist, as a producer. Yeah.
What would you say to anybody who was contemplating on wanting to make music? They're a supporter of Hard House, they're a Tidy fan, Tidy Pro is out there. What would you say to somebody who's thinking, should I do it?
Well, that's a no-brainer. It really is a no-brainer. I think you could go onto YouTube and you could find a tutorial for anything, literally, that you ever wanted, specifically around music. But that doesn't give you the mythology, the workflow, the passion that sort of is underpinning what Ben and this course is able to do. I think it's far better. Well, success leaves clues. Go and learn from the best. In this genre of music, there is nothing that touches this that comes anywhere close. I think if you're already a producer and you're like kind of maybe losing motivation, losing track, losing focus, this would be a great way to go and reinstill those things and actually reinstill good habits. Because I imagine a producer who's maybe taught themselves could get to a certain point, but I imagine there's a lot of poor habits. I know I can pick up poor habits and I have to check those things back. Yeah. So I think an established producer, to whatever level, could come through this course, even when they're thinking to themselves, I'm an established producer, this probably isn't for me. I can probably imagine that what Ben would do would take that person and skyrocket them. But then also someone who's complete newbie like me, what an experience. To go through that course, to come out the other side in a position where I can now sit, if I've got an idea, I can translate that into actual work, into actual sounds, into a workflow, into an arrangement, and into a finished track. I can, there isn't a track that I've started that I have not finished. There is nothing sitting on my computer unfinished. Everything I have finished. And out of the probably 10 tracks I've written, there's only one that I've not put out to be signed, because it's kind of, I'm like, okay, that I've learned some stuff in that. But everything else has been signed, has been picked up for remixes across different labels. So yeah, it's a no-brainer. I'd go through and do it again, no problem.
So you've picked quite a few tips and tricks up. What one thing would you pass on to somebody?
Well, sound choice is the first thing that comes to mind. I don't think I could get past that if I'd sit here and try and think. Sound choice is just king. You can use as many plugins as you want to try and overcome the fact that you've chosen a rubbish sound for something, or you can go back and pick the better sounds. The best tracks I've written, I've spent longer working with a reference tracks would probably be the other thing. I've spent longer working with a reference track, not trying to copy that track, but trying to maybe emulate the vibe, the feel of that track, and that comes through, yes, arrangement, but it has to come through sound choice. So yeah, it's boring and it probably gets heard a lot, but sound choices would be my number one pick, the thing that I hold very close since doing the course.
So if somebody wanted to get involved and to do a Tidy Pro course, how much commitment do you need to put to it time-wise, would you say?
Good question. I suppose that's different for an individual.
It will vary, obviously, depending on your circumstances.
I think, again, it depends. I don't think I had to put silly amounts into it, because we had very clear instructions of what we needed to go and do. And, if you've got a reasonable amount of time, you go away, spend a couple of hours working on something, you're going to get very close to that particular week's homework. You're not trying to, scale a mountain in one go.
Yeah.
It's only in small chunks. So you could be, a very busy person, now, with our working situations, we've all gone back to work. It should be very easy to, slide this course into your life pretty much seamlessly. You do your 1 to 2 hours actual, live training with the guys. Then you go away and just sort of do that small piece of homework. So, just for example, you start, it's just a drum loop, 8-bar drum loop, and then once that's a whole week's worth of work. But you're not working on it all the time. You just need to get it finished, get it submitted, get your feedback, make any necessary changes to it, and then you start to add the track there. So it's in terms of time, it's not a huge commitment. You can put as much time in it as you want, and I think if I went through it again now, I'd probably be a lot quicker. Going through it, so therefore I'd probably spend the same amount of time, but just escalate what I was doing.
What course or masterclass would you like to see that isn't already on there? If there was one thing you would really like to do that isn't on there, what would it be?
I'm trying to think what. So I've done quite a few of the other smaller ones. I've done one with Maddox. I think I've done a couple drum loop. So what have I don't know if it's one that's done. You might correct me. Riff writing and creation, and I'm guessing it probably has been done. That's one that I personally would always find useful. I can write drums pretty well. I can get them sounding pretty good. I'm not musically trained. I cannot play a keyboard. I could still quite happily sit there and do this, which doesn't make good music. So riff creation. Well, let's take that one step further. Possibly a level of musical theory. Some sort of teaching of musical theory without it blowing people's heads off.
Yeah.
I think there's possibly something that would be a weapon that I would add to my arsenal right now. Something musical theory where I can be like, okay, I understand the keyboard a bit better, chord progressions, what do and don't work with each other. That would be my one.
I think you've given people incentive enough and inspiration enough by saying you're not musically trained. You've had 2 releases out on Tidy. I know there's more in the pipeline. You've had releases on other labels. I think the proof's in the pudding there.
I think absolutely right. Yeah, I think it without I can't overstate it enough. It has been life changing. I have a busy coaching business in the background. This is my step out of that. This is my release from that. I to one degree I don't take it too seriously because I like to keep it the fun thing that I do on the side. Yeah. But then on the other side of things, what I do take it seriously because I don't want to put out poor quality music. It doesn't work for me as an artist, as well as DJing. But it's definitely something that, if I hadn't have done it, well, one, I wouldn't have finished tracks. I wouldn't have had, I think I've had 6-7 tracks signed. Goodness knows how many are coming out in the future. There's some really well respected people remixing some of my tracks right now. Wow. Like, this is kind of, it's a little surreal, like starting the whole thing with Ben was surreal. Sure. For this sort of situation to have happened to someone who has no musical theory knowledge. And if I hadn't have started the course, none of this would have taken place.
Brilliant. Thank you very much.
It was a pleasure.
Good luck with everything in the future.
Thank you very much.
Hopefully there'll be more interviews to come in the future.
Maybe there will, who knows?
Brilliant. Thank you very much.
Thank you, cheers.